Hello to the curious and the thoughtful. It's Ellie again. Great to see you. Okay, the news. Why is it that big institutions always insist on rebranding themselves instead of genuinely, authentically changing their ways? The logo might change and the slogan might change, but the story always stays the same, with very few exceptions. It's like when a con man gets caught and blows his cover, he doesn't reform himself. He just moves to a new town. He might change his name and then he continues the con. I remember in 1994, when I was living in Los Angeles, there was a show called America's Talking. I think that's when it first aired in 1994. And then I moved to Atlanta, and I remember I was sitting in my living room in Atlanta. It was 1996, and America's Talking shut down to make way for MSNBC, which replaced it as a 24/7 news forum, kind of. The thing is, MSNBC was not a news forum. It was an opinion forum, and it became increasingly so. But it was tied to the NBC newsroom. In fact, many of the staff transferred from America's Talking to MSNBC when America's Talking shut down to make room for MSNBC in 1996. Or they influenced the MSNBC strategy. So, for example, Chris Matthews is one of those people who moved from America's Talking to MSNBC, and he only just retired a couple of years ago. But also Roger Ailes, you know, the notorious Roger Ailes. He left America's Talking, was very influential about the structure of MSNBC, and then went off and started Fox News, I think. And then there's also Steve Doocy, who was from America's Talking, and he also ended up on Fox as well. And then a fellow called John Gibson. I think John Gibson may have been an anchor on NBC, and then he ultimately moved to Fox, and then he left Fox, and I think now he's in radio. So there you go. It may have been called America's Talking, and it may have then been called MSNBC, but some of these people were holdovers anyway. And so not much really changed. It can kind of flow in a different way, but not much really changed. MSNBC now is rebranding itself again. And the acronym that it had, MSNBC, originally stood for Microsoft plus NBC. Microsoft broke away in 2005, but now it's breaking away also from NBC. However, is it really changing? It's going to be called MS Now. In about a week and a half, it's changing, but it's still owned by Comcast, which has owned it since 2011. So what's the reason for the change of name? What's the reason for the rebranding? I've been reading up on quite a few of the news and opinion articles relating to this rebranding of MSNBC. The MSNBC anchors are talking about it and framing it as being a transition into independence, right? But is that actually true? MS Now, just like MSNBC, is still going to be owned and operated by Comcast. But instead of being partnered to the NBC News desk, it's going to be partnering with Sky News for its international news coverage, and it's going to be presenting its own news desk, is what the anchors seem to say as well. And it's elevating some of the names that may have been sort of propped forward as opinion guests or correspondents or, I don't know, experts in recent episodes that you've seen that come to chat with anchors on the various opinion shows. So what does that rebrand really mean? What's its purpose? This isn't about left or right, because I think it happens with every kind of big institution. It's about how the big institutions soothe us with this surface change, things like rebranding. But at the same time, they're still reinforcing the status quo that got us into this kind of worrisome situation in the first place. When I was living in Britain, I worked for a really big central government agency at one point, and they were trying to rebrand themselves, and they wanted to add the word royal to the agency name. They wanted to be the Royal something or other instead of just the something or other agency. The purpose of that was prestige, to appear to be linked to the monarchy. But in order to do so, the agency had a statutory requirement that it had to achieve in order to get that branding of royal. And that statutory requirement was to achieve a particular, actual, tangible standard of change. It couldn't just talk, but it had to show it. I was actually witness to the massive change program that was underway at this big government agency while they were trying to activate this kind of rebranding and get that word royal in their name. A lot of money, taxpayer money, went into that program, lots and lots of money. A disgusting amount of money, actually, relatively speaking. And I've just checked, it's been probably 10 years since I've looked at this agency's website, and there's still no royal in the agency name. No actual change. That means they didn't meet their target. They didn't tangibly change. They just did a lot of rebranding efforts. And apparently they weren't able to meet that statutory requirement. But boy, oh boy, one thing I noticed when I went looking was that their website spends a lot of time talking about increasing public confidence and kind of curating public perceptions and things like that. And that's the key to understanding the whole institutional rebranding thing. Like I said, I've been reading up on this MSNBC becoming MSN Now rebranding plan. And when I looked outside of what the MSNBC anchors and spokespeople are saying, I discovered a totally different story that could be one of the reasons why this rebrand is taking place. So MSNBC over the past year or so has been steadily losing ratings. Prime time is down 41% and its key demographic is down 54%. That's massive. It's like a free fall taking place. And it kind of makes you remember that scene from the Tom Cruise movie with Renee Zellweger. I think it was Jerry Maguire, when Tom Cruise's character is driving down the highway after handing out this manifesto that was not a popular one with his colleagues. And he's singing really confident, feeling, wonderful about himself in this moment. And he's singing, "I'm free falling." And he was free falling. He was really free falling. Well, this MSNBC thing feels a little bit like that moment in Jerry Maguire. That's what institutional rebranding is all about. It's designed to calm the anxiety of stakeholders like customers or viewers, and to help reignite the loyalty factor and to signal a kind of a freshness, but without activating any meaningful change. And the bigger the institution, the more invested in the status quo they are. It has nothing to do with transformation, and it has everything to do with curating perceptions. I'm only aware, in fact, of one institution recently that I can quite genuinely say I believe has truly transformed itself. And that's I think it's the outdoor clothing company called Patagonia. It's been around since the 1970s, but it went recently from being an entirely shareholder-owned company to one that is not for profit. All of the profits that come from sales are injected back into the fight against climate change. That's real transformation, but that's scary. And that's when you really have to put your money where your mouth is. This MSNBC rebranding to MS Now doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel real to me. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because I don't know, I'm not on the inside, but to me it kind of feels a bit like that government agency example that I gave you, that they thought that sticking royal in the name of the agency would indicate some genuine change. But because it was a statutory requirement that they do certain things, they weren't able to achieve that. So instead, they just created this massive program of perception curation that costs a lot of money, and they're still probably exactly the same as they were. So what about you? What's one rebrand, whether it's corporate, cultural, political, whatever, that you instantly recognize as being a bit iffy? Maybe you saw through it immediately. And are there any institutions out there that you genuinely believe have really transformed themselves? Those ones in particular, I'd love to know about, because maybe they need more of our support. Leave a comment. Remember, wearing a new outfit doesn't make you a new person. And it's the same for institutions. If you like this video, there's always more in the playlist just waiting to be seen. Welcome to the new world. This is Ellie, Dreams Down Under. I love knowing you're here, and I'll see you in my dreams.